Google just before I joined up Carat, which was the media flagship of Dentsu Aegis Network. And during my role at Carat, I worked a lot with the strategy and planning for Mondelez, the chocolate maker, and a few other clients. When I'm not at work, I am part of an NGO called. And during my role at Carat, I worked a lot with the strategy and planning for Mondelez, the chocolate. Okay, I think there's a slight echo. So cool. So yeah. So when I'm not at Dentsu Aegis, I'm actually involved with an NGO called Kindness Unlimited, and I think now more so is a time where we all need a little bit of kindness and compassion, and that's what I do with them. Moving on, essentially we're going to really cover how AI has shaped the way we communicate. I think digital and tech is where the entire sector has sort of moved towards. So I'm just going to talk a bit about my thoughts on that and the kind of stuff that I work with. Um, Before understanding how AI is really transforming the way we communicate, I think it's really important to put into context the way we've actually evolved from communication, and then more so what the future of that is going to look like. So yeah, so being an economist in an ad company, I think something that I like doing is to run experiments. This is the first time I'm going to do a virtual experiment, so just bear with me a bit. What I'm going to try to do is that I'm going to hum maybe a jingle of an ad or a tagline, and I want you guys to guess the brand. The second you'll guess the brand and you know it, just put it up in the comment section. Normally, when I have audiences, they all shout it out in unison. I have to warn you that I'm not a great singer, so just don't laugh at the way I actually do it. But here goes. Cool. So, क्योंकि हर एक friend जरूरी होता है.
Airtel.
You guys guess the brand? Yeah.
Airtel.
That's it. That's Airtel. ये दिल मांगे more. Aha.
Pepsi.
Awesome.
Pepsi.
And yeah, this is actually my favorite campaign.
Surf Excel.
Brilliant.
Surf Excel.
Yeah, so I think what we sort of proved with this mini virtual experiment is that in some form communication has actually transformed and had some impact on our lives. It's why we connect with certain brands, why we really love their messaging, and why we even buy a particular product, right? It's really what differentiates why, let's say, I'm interested in Nike versus someone else who might be interested in Adidas. The thing about communication is that it's all around us, right? Right from the start of our day, where on our phones we're seeing ads on Facebook and we are messaging and stuff like that, or even when we step out of home. Well, of course, now we're in a lockdown world, but let's imagine that we stepped out of our homes, we'll see hoardings and billboards, or even on television, right? So communication in some way is all around us. And what it's essentially trying to do while it's transformed, right, in the way it communicates. So for example, let's say earlier newspaper advertisements were really popular. Now it's getting popularity again, but now things have moved towards digital. But essentially what's really the same is what brands are trying to do with that communication, right? So essentially it's trying to change what we know and associate with a brand, so that we either want it more or we value it more highly, or both. So want it more in the sense that why do I want an Apple phone over a Samsung phone? And value it more highly is that why the hell am I in a rational mind able to wanting to pay like 1 lakh for an iPhone versus a Samsung phone, right? So that's essentially what communication still tries to do. And that has not changed from the start of advertising to now. Cool. Just gonna move on to the next slide. Okay, yeah. So in 2019, of course, in 2020, this figure will be reduced, but in 2019, brands spent about $600 billion globally to just get to the right people with the right messaging on the right medium. And if you think about that, that's a hell of a lot of money. Often people really wonder what the real value of advertising and brand communication is. But if you just think about the situation in which we're in now, right? The economy, people are projecting to grow at 1.9 or 2% without without the situation in which we're in, we were actually growing at 6 or 7%. So you're talking about a 4% growth that just comes uh, through what communication and marketing and branding has really created, right? Because if you're talking about when you're what our essential needs are, that's only a 2% growth. But when you talk about the inflated value that advertising actually adds to get the economy really moving, that's the added 4 or 5% that was sort of negating in a period like that. So it's a tremendous impact that advertising and communication has in the economy, not just in our minds, but the economy as well. Um, So yeah, so before we really go into how things are moving forward, let's actually take a step back in the past to understand how communication has really evolved. And before doing that, I really want to talk about how long tech has taken to reach its first 50 to 100 million users. So if you look at the telephone, right, the telephone took something like 75 years to get to that mark. Radio then took about 38 years. And as you see the chart, right, as you move downwards, the time taken to reach those first set of users is actually reduced by half. So technology and the progress that we've made has transformed and really made rapid the way people actually get information, and that's what's pretty apparent in this slide. So much so that when Jennifer Aniston came onto Instagram a few months ago, right, in just 24 hours, I think she managed to hit about 10 to 13 million people with this single post, and that's just how rapid technology has sort of progressed. Going back to the very beginning of advertising, this is the first form of advertising that surfaced about in 2000 BC, more about cave inscriptions and steel plates, where people were really trying to talk about, let's say, future events. This was a snapshot from Egypt where they were talking about a feast that was coming up. So you can try to see that in the inscription design. In 1440 came the printing press, where things started moving from just steel plates to trying towards moving towards some form of mass communication. This was the first print communication in 1472. It was this guy named William Caxton. What he tried to do in the Church of England is put up these posters outside the church because that's where people used to really go a lot. And he tried to sell a book. And that's essentially what this communication is all about. Coming to 1704, where you had the first newspaper ad surface. Now you're going really mass from just the printing press towards mass printing. And this is the first form of newspaper advertisement. In India in 1780 was when the first paper ad surfaced. It's more about how the British were telling people about goods and people who actually came from abroad. So that was the first advertisement in print in India. Soon after, people actually started becoming more mobile with the invention of the automobile. So that's when out of home advertising really took to prominence, because now suddenly we're not just geographically situated in one part of your house, but you could actually travel to different places, and maybe different places had different things to tell people who'd come to those places. So then you had outdoor really be promoted. In 1835, you had the first billboard advertising to talk about getting people to come to a circus. So here now you can see, if you remember the entire journey, right? We've moved from like a steel plate inscription to a small number of people to a printing press, which actually tried to increase it a bit in reach, then to newspaper advertising, and now to billboards. Um, okay. And yeah, in 1892 was the first personalized communication in some way, where Sears, a very large retailer, pretty much like how Walmart and Star Bazaar and stuff like that are, right? So they actually tried to do a direct mail campaign where they actually started collecting, or the first sense of people collecting some data to have some form of targeted advertising. And that's what happened in this campaign. Coming to the golden age of advertising, right? This is somewhere in the early 60s, where you had the Marlboro Man. Essentially, if you saw what the Marlboro Man was all about, is that he tried to promote some sense of macho-ness, and you can see this more about the Wild Wild West, and people really being awed by that kind of a personality per se. Fast forward to 2011. So while the way and the nature of advertising has really changed, essentially what the Old Spice man tried to do was the same thing as what the Marlboro man tried to do, right? So he's on his horse saying, look at this guy, now look at me, now look at this guy, right? That's the ad that I'm talking about. So you can see that the way they're communicating has changed a bit, but the essence and the message that they're trying to do is the same idea that they're trying to promote, whether it's the 1960s or it's 2011. Now, coming to the era in which we live in, all of you guys know in some form we've been touched by digital and AI in our lives. Talking about the way data is really collected and generated right now, right? I think we're in a golden age per se, because history so far has not seen a time ever where you had so much information to actually be able to tell you who your right audience is, or be able to tell you which direction people are moving towards, because of the sheer magnitude of what is available out there for you to process. Just putting things into perspective, right? If I had to look at every single data set that was recorded and generated from the time communication was ever in existence to about 1960, right? I'll need 10 of these floppies per se to record all of that information. Today, if I just had to store all episodes of Game of Thrones, right, I'll actually need 7,000 of these floppies. And that's just like quantifying the scale at which data is now generated. And brands are really using this to their fullest advantage, right? So often people would think Nike is just a shoe company. Now, if you see their ads and the way they communicate, even what they did for COVID, right, where they said that the greatest game you ever play is a game by staying at home, right? So essentially, what they're doing is that they're never really promoting a shoe. They're promoting an idea and a philosophy, and all of that is driven through a great degree of personalization, right? It's the same reason why, let's say, if I go onto Nike's website, I'm probably shown a blue sneaker for running. Whereas if my sister who plays squash, she probably sees a black sneaker for squash gear, right? So that is the magnitude at which data is being processed, and people are actually using it, and not just the data, right? The technology behind that to actually get to the right consumer. So I'm now really going to talk about three trends. The way AI is shaping the way we communicate in the future. We're already seeing just very basic levels of this in terms of where technology has moved and in terms of our interaction with it. But we're only scratching. I think sky is the limit, and it's really going to progress a lot from the year to the years to come. So the key three themes I'm going to talk about are voice and AI, messaging, AR, and VR. Um, I think something's playing in the background.
I've muted the video. Continue.
Okay, great. Awesome. So I'm going to talk about voice and AI first. How many of you guys have actually seen Star Trek? Okay, I'm sure that this would pop up in the chat. I somehow can't see the chat. But yeah, what Star Trek really showed us, right, was the dream of how people should interact with technology, right? You had this master computer where you would just ask it anything and it would give you an answer. And that, if you see, is what Google's vision was. So before they even became a search company, they wanted to really organize information in such a way that the interaction between a person and a computer would be so seamless that you would actually feel that you're talking to the same species. So essentially, that's where the first movement towards AI started. Now, of course, we're seeing a lot of this in technologies that we have in our devices. You have Siri, Cortana, Alexa, and so many more personal assistants that are doing just the same way. And you can actually see. So, for example, Google did an I/O last year where it showed a restaurant reservation being made just driven by voice, right? I'm not sure if many of you guys actually saw it, but that actually meant that a computer could talk to another computer or a person without anyone actually feeling that they're talking to a different, whether they're actually talking to a machine. So I think that's like just the surface of what we're trying to do, but there's so much more that you can do with voice and voice powered AI. When you talk about messaging, I think messaging has actually taken a tremendous impact. I spoke about how it did it in voice per se. When it comes to messaging, things have become really more personalized, with regards to the context that brands have now to communicate with people, right? So a simple example, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will see this, you can see this pop up in the Expedia video out there, is that even when you go into a chat, a messenger chat of any of these brands, they already know that you're looking for a reservation for a hotel. They know some information about you. They already give you recommendations. They give you things to do in those places. They spot the best deals. And that is, if you think about it, right, is something very basic that we're now used to. But there's a tremendous amount of computation and data that's happening in the back end to be able to power that. And I think that is something that is truly remarkable with the way things are evolving. Um, and lastly, coming to VR and AR, I'm sure a lot of you guys would have seen this crazy app that I'm going to talk about, Pokemon Go. There have been so many more gaming apps that have otherwise come up using technology of AR and VR. A lot of brands are actually creating stuff like virtual showrooms. So this is something that Dentsu actually did in Japan, where for Uniqlo, we actually created virtual stores where people could actually figure out how they look in a particular item even before they actually bought it or tried it on. So that's really where technology has sort of moved, and communication has sort of evolved to be more seamless. And all of this is powered by technology that we've created just in the last 10 years or so. With that, I'd actually like to end my very short presentation because I'm normally in the habit of keeping a greater volume of my communication for an open Q&A. I really hope you guys liked what I had to show you so far. And yeah, I'm looking forward to taking your questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abhinay, for a very short but very powerful the presentation on the overview of the advertisement, the evolution of the artificial intelligence, and how you have integrated that into the marketing communication. So I think we have a couple of questions as well. We have created a list of the questions that would be asking to Abhinay. So that will give you more insight about the marketing, advertisement, and some of the personal lives of Abhinay. So without wasting
Sure.
of
Raj, sorry, before you go ahead, right? Someone in the chat has said that they're actually stronger in Hindi. So I think if we can, at the after this session, I can work with you and we can maybe circulate this in Hindi, or we can even have like a follow up with that person because I don't
sure,
want
sure,
anyone to be
sure, that can be
without.
done. That will do it post our session. That would be
Sure,
great.
sure, awesome.
Okay, okay, Vinay. So our first question is obviously the entire world is faced with this global pandemic called COVID-19. So since you are a part of the data science team at Dentsu, you're working into the data, you're working in numbers since last many years. What, according to you, how the AI and data science can help the global community to fight the COVID-19?
Actually, that's a really, really very pertinent question, especially in the era in which we're in. More so because everything that I said about advertising and the way you can use data and technology to sort of better reach a person, right? You're already seeing companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft, Apple collaborate to creating models that actually discover the strain of the virus per se to predict how it's going to evolve next and even come up with a drug, right? IBM, for example, ran an analysis and discovered, I think, about a few thousand permutation combinations of drugs, of chemicals that can be put together to create drugs that can possibly cure a vaccine. And universities like Stanford are really collaborating with them to come up to that solution. So I think that there's a good use of technology, not just a bad use of technology that people really see. And interestingly, 2 weeks ago, the government of India launched a COVID hackathon per se with FICCI and the IAA, and I was actually judging some of the innovations in that per se. And I think it's tremendous seeing the way people have just put base level technology together to be able to either create portable UV screeners and a lot of that, right? So I definitely think that there's a tremendous impact. There are already things that are already being done to create that, and I think that we're going to be more prepared to handle this disease than we were when we were handling Spanish flu.
Great, great. So I think from the government and from the individual and from the organization and people are trying their best with the use of the technology to fight this global pandemic. My second question is, since our team has gone through your past interviews and they have analyzed, you already handled some consumer insights projects, right? So
Yeah.
can you just share more details about the same as well? What was the experience and how you basically successfully handled the same?
So a large part of what I spend my time with, choose to spend my time with, right, is creating these products and pieces of technology that really help brands identify who their right consumers are. So pretty much like the Nike example that I gave you. So if Nike wants to come up with a new shoe, who is the audience they should communicate? What is the audience actually consuming in terms of content on Facebook, on Google, on Twitter, on other platforms? And can you use that information to shape the way you've either created a creative or you've reached out that advertising? So I think those are products that I've actually built along with my team. And traditionally, if you saw the way technology was, right, an innovation would be developed in the US and the UK and then shipped out to India to be used. What we've been able to do is that we've created technology out here that now are in use to about 25 to 30 countries globally who actually use these products that we've actually created.
Okay, okay, great, great. Our third question is, it's a bit personal. So you are the son of the undisputed media veteran, the Ashish Vasin. So is it a pressure whenever you go for a job, whenever you, since you both belong to the same industry, is it a pressure to handle and match up to the expectation of the people?
So the way I look at it, right, we're two very different individuals. Everyone who knows us will also say the same thing. And I think that's why we're also in very different lines of business. So he is more in terms of like handling the business and traditional communication and stuff. And I've spoken to and I've actually chosen and spoken to use the skills that I'm actually really passionate about, which is understanding consumers and hence moving to the data sciences division. Like any other situation, of course, everyone would sort of question legacy and say that okay, is he entitled because well, he belongs to a certain family? The way I look at it is that it's my greatest strength. It's not about being entitled for me. It's just about getting to the next level from where I am in terms of where my personal ambitions are. And along the way, since I'm very connected to causes like kindness and stuff like that, so I try to invest my time in areas that bring me happiness rather than focus on the negativity. And I think that's what I really look towards as an individual.
Great, great, great. So I think it is still a pressure, but you are handling it very well. That we can see from your achievements in the last couple of years, and we hope so you keep achieving the more such reached in the next couple of years as well. My next
Thanks.
question is, since you entered the ad industry, you belong to the you've done your masters from economics, and then you entered into the ad agency industry. It's a completely different domain now. Since when you entered the ad industry and when your dad joined, it was a completely different scenario, especially if you take the advertisement context. So, according to you, how advertisement industry has evolved over a past couple of years? What's your take on the same?
So the way I look at some of the earlier campaigns that he worked with in companies like Lintas, right? So one of the key things that he did was he launched a little girl in some form. So essentially, if I look at it, right, I think the mode of communication has really changed. Like at that time, traditional advertising was really dominant. More so because consumers also would spend a lot of time on TV and print and stuff, right? As digital started becoming this new animal that everyone wanted to get on board, as smartphone penetration increase, as just, I mean, India is the country where data is available at the cheapest possible level globally, right? So as things like that started moving and you saw a lot of digitization come up and people really coming towards mobile phones, right? I think that coming to answer your question, right? Because now you simply have a lot more information, you can actually get that messaging right, you can get that consumer right, and not just be an irritant factor like a pop-up ad. And I think that's no something that no one wants, but actually getting context and getting into the right conversation at the right time with the person is where things have moved towards. And I think that's like the biggest difference that I've seen over the last 20 years or so that I've been, maybe 15 years that I've been exposed to the business.
Yeah, so getting in front of the right audience at right time, I think that is the key for a successful marketing. Excellent. My next question is, since you had the mental health, again go back to in the same context, you had your dad and still now as a mentor for your career. Now, what according to you, if anyone wants to launch their digital startup because it's in the entrepreneur era, what is the role of the mentor for digital startup? How important it is?
So I actually think that firstly, in terms of timing, I think there couldn't be a better time to sort of launch a digital company per se, because especially because everything now is just moved towards an entirely digitally enabled and controlled environment. So I think that way it's the best time. I'd just be a little hesitant because, as a lot of you guys know, brands in a way have really focused, not cut down in some way, but focused their spends. So you have to be really cautious about a problem that you're trying to solve and whether that's large enough and scalable enough. I think if you're able to crack that at the right cost, it's a brilliant proposition to have.
Great, great, great. So I think the role of mentor is very important for not only just a digital startup, and I think this is a perfect opportunity since due to COVID-19, all the traditional medium has suffered a major setback in terms of the advertisement value. So I think this is the right timing per se to start
Yeah.
launch
And
your
also to add to that, I think the right mentor can actually, so a lot of companies can be made or broken also by the mentorship or the knowledge that they receive, right? So a right mentor can really channelize you and with their experience actually tell you which are probably the right areas and the big enough gaps to solve rather than anything else. So I think that's going to be a tremendous role that a mentor should also play. And whenever companies look at getting mentors on board, they should really look at the value that that guy is going to add rather than the negative impact of it. Because
great.
it's very easy to be distracted, especially when you're in a startup phase, right? So getting the right focus is going to be crucial in your formative years.
Great, great. So I think it's not just about the mentor, but the right mentor which can scale up your startup like anything.
Yeah.
My next question is since our team has gone through your past interviews and we came to know that you and your dad play the chess very well regularly.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask when is the last time you played the chess game and who won the game?
So we start every morning by playing a chess game. So before we start our schedules, we play a chess game. And at the end of the day, when we're winding up, is when we play our second game. Usually, as trend has it, I sort of win the morning games and he wins the evening games. More because also I'm a morning person and he's more of an evening person.
Great, great, great. My next question is what is your take on the digital Gurukul Masterclass series that we have launched?
I think it's a very valuable and holistic session and seminar and series of seminars that you guys have organized. More so because a lot of people, like you said, right, are trying to either start up or are trying to scale in some form or are trying to just get more information. So I think it's you've launched it and you've really propelled it at a good. The level of speakers I think is great because you're really getting the right talent to sort of talk to the people who are actually in the field or who others want to sort of get guidance from. So I think that from that perspective, it's a great program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abhinay. My last question, and then we'll take up the audience and participants' question. What would be your message for students post COVID-19 to those who are willing to enter into the data science industry or artificial intelligence, the young
Right. So
talent?
So I really feel that data, like analyzing data and handling data, is now almost going to become a skill like literacy, where you're almost going to be expected to sort of know that really well. So irrespective of the field that you join, whether it's advertising or it's the government or it's like any role in like an FMCG company or something like that, right? The ability to handle data is really going to be something that you can really make or break your career with. So I think that is something that you should really focus on. So it's not really about the amount of experience. It's not really going to be about your past achievements, but everything that you focus on now is really going to matter. So you might as well invest your energies in something that's really going to count.
Okay, I think that is the best message that student can get regarding entering into the data science or any other field of the industry which is based on the future skills that would be needing. We'll take up the participant question. So one of the participant asked us how one can gain the knowledge in data science and what are the essential requirements one must have to go on to this field.
Okay, so that's a very good question. In fact, some of this guidance I got when I was actually starting out my career from that sense, because no one really chose or took this field or path that I've sort of gotten myself into right now, or at least no one who I knew at that time actually went into it. Sure, advertising, yes, but not data per se. One of the key areas that I'd like people to focus on if they're getting into this space is to really get a good knowledge of mathematics and statistics. I think that is something that will really keep you strong and hold you in good stead. Because if you look at any machine learning or AI algorithm, right, the base of that is requires a strong foundation in mathematics and statistics. So I would really focus on that. And the next thing is that you can actually pick any course under the sun. There are thousands that are available on Udemy. Gurukul might have some moves. A lot of these global colleges are also offering these programs. So there are any number of courses that are actually available. But the important takeout from those courses is applying those learnings and applying them quickly in life projects. And I think that is something that you should focus on, because just knowing theory, pretty much like the Indian education system, right? Just knowing theory without a practical experience of that is not going to hold you well in the long run perspective unless you've developed a skill out of it.
Great, great. So I hope that answer your query about how you can enter into the data science. The second question is asked, how one can actually begin their data science journey as an intern. What are some of the leading companies or some of the agencies that you would like to share? That is a question.
So it's really important in terms of understanding what your future path is. You can begin in an advertising company, you can begin in a tech company like Google, you can begin in a consultant, you can start off in any of these places. A lot of them, so now times might be different, but a lot of them actually had open internship programs where you can actually sign on. So, for example, the Google internship that I did was their summer internship program that they have. So, a lot of these companies have those facilities to offer. Check out for companies now that offer remote internships for you to do. So I know Lego does that. So you can actually get on to just pick anything. I think the important thing, like I said, right, is to start somewhere and then to head out where you need to. But it's also good to have like a general guideline into what is it that you want to be in the next 3 years and what is it that you want to be in the next 5 years. Because this time that you have is you're not going to get it again, right? And this is going to set the base for your future career.
Great, great. The next question is basically where you see the data science in the next 10 years.
So in the next 10 years, forget 10 years, I think like in the next 5 years, right? I mean, you're already seeing things like AR, VR, AI, ML really change the way we even interact with technology. And I think that is just going to propel, right? Be it rapid disease identification, like the kind of models that Google has built with a lot of healthcare companies. So it's really going to be a very dynamic field. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know that things are changing at a pace like it's never happened before. I only think that it's going to be for the better, because you're going to maybe have, let's say, fast, like I said, right, faster detection of diseases and maybe faster treatment of those. Or you're going to have self-driving cars, or you're going to have maybe other autonomous technologies, right? So you're gonna have a lot of that shape the way we interact with technology, and I think that's what we're going to see trends of in the next 3 to 5 years per se.
Okay. Great. I think so. The future is bright in the, at least not only for 10 years, but if you say the next 5 years, I think this is the future would be there, whether you talk about AI, data science, or machine learning. The next question is basically on your experience side. So when you started out, what were the initial challenges that you faced? Obviously, all the participants, once they are willing to enter into the AI machine learning, they might be facing some of the challenges. So once when you entered into the industry, what are the initial challenges that you faced?
Okay, so I think so. Even when you're starting out your career, right, you need to sort of identify the paths that you want to go as a data scientist or someone in the field. So there are broadly two things, right? One is you either get into development where you're hard coding stuff yourself and you're really involved in that. And the second is when you're deciding the vision of the product and you're able to translate a business problem into a tech-driven solution. And that is a completely different ball game, right? So you got to really identify the space that you want to be in. And more so for me, when I really started out, I think the biggest hurdle that I faced was interacting with tech talent and actually being that translator between a business and a tech side. And I think that is a skill that I've grown to evolve very quickly. I had to learn it in the first 6 months, but I had to grow and evolve into that for the last 4 years that I've been a part of it, right? So I think that is a transformation that I've at least seen in myself, and I think it's a good skill to have because there are very few. While there are many coders and there are many business guys, there are very few who can actually speak both and translate both. And I think that itself is a good skill to have for those of you who wish to enter into the field.
Oh, great. I think it's not just a typical challenge that you face, it's a normal challenge that mostly all the industry, when you enter into any industry that you face. So it's all about how you motivate yourself and the right path basically lead to the success into the
It's
any.
actually more, it's also more about adapting to changing in different environments, because like especially even what you're seeing companies now, right? Those that will come out of this stronger than others are those that were able to adapt faster than others.
Oh, great, great. The next question is, which is one of the memorable campaign that you worked on?
That's a great one. So I think one campaign that I'll really remember for the longest time is for this brand called Five Star, where we tried to do an association with the Kabali film. I think at that time the brand was having a tough time penetrate the South market per se, and it was very natural to sort of associate with the largest superstars. So I think that's a campaign that was something that I really invested a lot into. I was handling the implementation planning of it and the strategy of it at that time, and I think it was a great campaign also that we sort of saw.
Okay, okay, great. The next question is, would you like to share any resources for the freshers to gain some knowledge? Any websites or list of the YouTube channels that you would like to share with the students?
Sure. So I can send you a bunch of links and you can maybe forward that to everyone who signed up
Sure,
on
done.
the call. But essentially, I mean, it really doesn't matter where you start. Pick up any course under the sun, like I said, and really look at applying whatever you learn from the course. One particular program that I liked was this data sciences nano degree that was done by John Hopkins University. I can maybe link that to you. It's
Sure.
probably on Udacity. So look at that nano degree. It's really good from a foundational point of view, but then of course like pick up many courses after that to sort of cement your knowledge.
Great, great. So I think this is how we'll wrap up the session. We have taken all the questions from our team, from our participant, and from entire Digital Gurukul family. Abhinay, we thank from bottom of our heart for being there on the session to share the valuable insights. On frank, I mean, you be very frank with the participant. You answered each and every question as elaborative as possible, and you have given much value to all the participants, those who woke up early into the morning. And because this was the first morning session, normally we have an afternoon and evening session. This was our first morning session. So I can see everyone, most of the participants are just woke up with the session. So I think that was the one of the best and memorable session, and will hopefully it will be you'll be connected with us for a longer period of time, and we'll stay in touch for more such future collaboration. And I'll request all the participants, if you like the session, I would like to give the feedback to the Mr. Abhinay. You just take a picture of the screen. You can post it on Twitter as we do it with other participants as well. You take a picture and you tag Mr. Abhinay is there onto the LinkedIn as well. He's there very active on Twitter. I think you were the first person. We're not only the active but reverted back as early as possible. So I think you are the only one that our team has pitched, and we got a very prompt revert. So I think you can.
Great. And yeah, feel free to, you guys can reach out to me any way that you'll like. You can share feedback. We can always chat up if you have specific questions. And yeah, like Raj said, I'm really glad that you guys took the time out in the morning. I think it's something that I also enjoyed doing coming here. So thank you so much for your time. I really hope you all enjoyed the candid chat that we had towards the end of it. And yeah, hoping to connect with you guys soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. So hope you have taken the snapshot and you put it on the social media and share your views. And we'll surely have you in the future as well. Just a quick update for participant. Our next session is there at 4 p.m. So it is on to the design thinking and digital marketing. So that is very interesting take. So have your lunch properly, and then we'll see you sharp at 4. And meantime, thanks a lot, Abhinay, for being there, and it was pleasure having you as always. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Abhinay.
Thanks. Bye.